All right, guys, if we attempt to list this next guest's grappling credentials, we'll probably run out of time to even do this interview. Just now in 2015, she won the ADCC Submission Wrestling World Championships. Also in 2015 and 2016, she won the gold of the World Jiu-Jitsu Championships. She has won the World Cup out of Abu Dhabi in 2015 in the under 55 kilogram and absolute divisions, and again in 2016 in the under 55 kilogram division. Apart from dominating on the mats, she has an impressive undefeated 6-fight win streak in MMA, making her UFC debut at UFC 222. She is now set to return at UFC 224 against Amanda Cooper. Mackenzie Dern, welcome to the First Time to Submission Radio. It's great to have you on the program.
Yes, thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, no, I absolutely appreciate the time, and it's great to have you on the show. Before we even get into the MMA stuff, Dennis obviously rattled off, I think, 500,000 incredible grappling accomplishments, and because this is the first time we've had you on the show, got to ask, out of all the ones that you've competed in and won and all the titles you've claimed, what is the one that stands out to you as your favorite accomplishment? Is there one that sort of stands out above the rest?
No, I don't think there's one in particular. I probably have like my three top favorites. The ADCC is like one that I've always, the submission grappling one is the one that I wanted since I was like 3 years old. I remember like my dad competing in Abu Dhabi, fighting that tournament when it was just like invitation only. So when I was able to win that one, that was like such a big deal for me. I think the first world title at black belt, is like for anyone who's trying to be like world champion. Of course, I won the world like at the other belts, but nothing can compare to when you win at black belt. Black belt's like the top of the top. So I think the first black belt world title was the best. And then I think just when I won the absolute division, I fought like a girl, Gabby Garcia. She's really big.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. And I was fighting the lightest division. So not that, to beat her was a big thing, but I think just like, I think I saw the biggest like movement in the jiu-jitsu community after that win. I think it just inspired so many people, and it was crazy, like the ripple effect that it had on the jiu-jitsu world. It was really crazy. So I think that was a huge win too.
And do you think that sort of it kind of in some ways was an ode to jiu-jitsu roots, because jiu-jitsu in some ways was kind of that David versus Goliath kind of mentality where you don't have to be huge to beat your opponent, and obviously you being smaller and beating someone as big as Gabby Garcia, who was just enormous, was kind of almost a very old school ode to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I think for sure it was kind of like, man, because like jiu-jitsu was created like for the small person to defend themselves or be the bigger person, but kind of like when the bigger person didn't know jiu-jitsu, so like to be able to show like the efficiency of jiu-jitsu, even like against like both black belts, like she knows the same arm bars I know, she knows the same chokes I know, and still like be able to show that like jiu-jitsu can still work, even when it's like even balance, I think was like really great to show that and prove that. So I was really happy.
Is there a room where you keep all the medals and the trophies, or have you had to buy a new house because you need another room to fit everything? it must be, you must have so much gold that if the currency goes down tomorrow, you can just trade on gold bars.
No, for me, I put the medals like in a box. Most of my like biggest medals, they're on my dad's house. He's definitely like a proud dad, he puts my medals next to his medals, Now it's kind of like I'm on like the whole MMA career. So now what I keep is like my gloves, my like this new journey thing. I have those stuff like kind of saved in my office, place, So just the medals. The thing like about jiu-jitsu is we compete every month basically, like sometimes 2-3 times a month. So I've had so many fights. People ask me like how many fights I've had in jiu-jitsu. Like, man, more than like 1,000 fights, for sure. So, of course, like each medal is nice, but it's really the memory. It's like it's the whole training, everything we've been through, before doing the camp and everything that makes it all worth it. Not the medals. But my dad's so proud. He has all the medals up in his house, the most important ones.
I love it. He's got a museum happening. I feel like when you made your debut at UFC 222. You should have worn all of your medals around your neck because you walked out. I reckon that would have made a good impression on the way to the octagon. Was this ever considered?
No, some people like like before they had the whole Reebok thing, they say like, oh, you should walk out, like in your gi, and when you could do that type of stuff, But if I wanted to stay, I think like me in general, I represent jiu-jitsu, but if I wanted to stay like just a jiu-jitsu person, I would stay in jiu-jitsu, I wouldn't get like punched in the face and doing all this stuff, So like I'm trying to represent jiu-jitsu as much as I can in MMA, but if I can get the submission, that's great. But I'm trying to stay standing up too, I'm trying like people to take me serious as like an all-around fighter and everything. Of course, I'm not like Muhammad Ali or anything right now, or anything like that. But it's a process, it takes time. It was just my first fight in the UFC. If I can stay standing up and the people respect my stand-up, I think that'll be easier for me to be able to get the submission. If I'm just going for the submission the whole time, like, man, I know for sure the camp of the girls is like going to be the whole camp just like take down the fence and just submission defense. It's harder. It's way harder, So I want them to be like a little bit respect my stand-up, but really like just to be able to set up my submissions better,
Well, I mean, now that it's been a couple of weeks after UFC 222, obviously, we saw that, you're a very harsh critic of yourself, but looking back on that fight, how are you feeling about that victory and how would you grade your performance?
I think it was good, we were like looking, and I didn't like know too much about Ashley Yoder's like background, like I didn't know how she had her losses and wins and things like that, like I knew that she came off of 2 losses, but like me and my coach, like we were looking, like I think 2 of her losses were by split decision too, so like she's tall and she was a southpaw, so I mean she's a tough girl, it was a tough fight. I think like for my first fight was like a tough fight. So like of course for me, I just like I'm not used to so many critics, so like it's normal, I'm okay with it, but I criticize more myself than everyone else, so I was sad when I came off when I finished the match, like I wish it wasn't like a split decision, or I wish I could have got the submission at like the last 30 seconds, like maybe if I would have tried a little bit sooner to take down. But I feel like it was okay. I feel like the rating, like if I could choose, I know a lot of people watch the fight. I saw like the numbers come out from like how many views and everything. So I'm happy that people like are interested to see how I'm gonna do, and I think it was a good fight. I think like I showed heart, and that's like the most important thing. Like I think heart is something that you can't get. It's something you either have it or you don't. So I think everything else, the technique and the rest, is all going to come with time.
Do you go online and do you read things that people say about you, or do you go on websites and read media people's articles about their thoughts on your fight? Did you do that after UFC 222?
No, I don't. I don't even look like my own comments on my Instagram. I post a picture. I post the stuff that I want to post. I just try and keep my mind clear. I know like I have a lot of like fans and support. So that's that. But I try not to look at the critics and stuff like that. I think like I'll do it myself, and I'll ask my coaches what they think and things like that. But I don't look at all this stuff. It's just so much.
Yeah. You mentioned before the ratings that actually you mentioned before. Basically, Dave Meltzer, he reported that your fight had the highest ratings for the undercard that night. You said you were pretty happy about that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think so many people were curious about your fight? And I'm wondering if you had to guess the demographic, who do you think the people were that were tuning in? Is it the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community? Is it the people that used to watch you in LFA? And who do you think it was? And why do you think you have that, I guess, connection with the fans?
I don't know, really. I think for sure probably the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community. We have out of a lot of the fighters, I'm one of the only fighters that came. Like I'm not in this whole journey by myself. I'm coming with a whole community with me. So I think for sure there are a lot of like the Jiu-Jitsu community that were tuning in to see how I was gonna do, like cheering and stuff. But I think too, like thankfully, I had a lot of promotion from the UFC. I think they were excited to see, to have like a jiu-jitsu person. They don't have any women. Like they have Demian Maia, they had BJ Penn, Jacare Souza. They have like Fabrício, a lot of like guys in jiu-jitsu. But I'm the first woman like Brazilian jiu-jitsu world champion to be in UFC. And so I think they're excited. The promotion that they did too got people excited. What's crazy, after the fight, I like went to the gym. like LA Fitness and like tons of people were like, hey, you're a fighter, you know, it's way more than what it was from just from one day to the next, you know. So I'm like, man, it's different. It's definitely a new scene, you know, like it's a way bigger stage that you're fighting on.
You mentioned how you're one of the only sort of high-level female submission artists in the UFC. You know, unlike say the guys with Damian Maia and other people like that. With the UFC, it's no secret they're starving for stars. And even though your career, especially in MMA, it's still early days, very much in its infancy. Do you think the UFC kind of have these hopes for you, where they hope that maybe you'll become another Ronda Rousey? Because obviously there's been comparisons between you and her for a long time. Just because obviously she had great submissions, you have great submissions, and the UFC kind of like to put people in a box and sort of put them on a certain trajectory. Do you sort of get that feeling a little bit as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think for sure, but I don't think like in a bad way. I think it's good for both. I think it's good for them. Like I'm half Brazilian, half American. I have the support from the two biggest countries in MMA. So it's like, man, And I think even like if people want to see me win or if they want to see me lose, it doesn't matter if they want to see like they're just excited to see what will happen, or like, okay, will they stop the hype train? No, will they keep going? So I think definitely for sure like the UFC is like taking advantage of that. I think if they can see like Royce Gracie, he was the original UFC champion, like was able to submit all these people. So I think like kind of comes back to the roots of MMA. It just is like really inspiring for people, like of course knockouts are nice. People like to see knockouts and crazy fights, but when you see like, man, like this little like girl go into the fight and like is able to take some punches, take to the ground and submit, I think it's exciting too for people. So I think like for sure the UFC is kind of hoping that this will happen, like that I can just get a lot of the public. I have like tons of fans in Ireland. We were just looking at that. Like I have tons of fans in Ireland too. So I'm like, man, that's awesome. I'm glad that people can connect with me and that they're supporting me or just excited to see what's going to happen in my career.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of fans all over the world, even Australia, New Zealand, a lot of people know about you and are excited about you being in the UFC. I want to talk about UFC 224, but just quickly before we get to that, I want to ask you, Mackenzie, when it comes to training, obviously you've been focusing on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for such a long time, and we see a lot of top grapplers sort of try and transition to MMA, and a lot of them don't succeed as much as people think they would. So I'm wondering, what is the secret to transitioning from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to mixed martial arts? Because me and Casper, we've dabbled in both. We're not experts or anything, but they are very different arts. And at the level that you're at with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is it a point where you're just primarily focused on stand-up, or how much time do you still spend on your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And is it hard for you because you love Jiu-Jitsu so much to sort of, I suppose, spend time away from it trying to focus on all the other parts of being an MMA fighter?
Yeah, it was so hard for me. Even like all of 2017, basically, I was like doing MMA, but still trying to compete Jiu-Jitsu at the same time. And it was so hard, because like I wasn't able to like give it up 100%. I was like, no, okay, I can still compete Jiu-Jitsu, But now I like see, okay, no, you have to be 100%. Like you always have to dedicate yourself 100% to whatever you do, So now that I'm in the UFC and everything, I already like made the decision to completely concentrate on MMA. But I think for sure, yeah, the stand-up. Me as like a Jiu-Jitsu person, you see like Rose and some of these girls doing like flying arm bars and things like that. Like that's kind of a little bit my style in Jiu-Jitsu, So it's a little bit like strange, that I'm training so much my stand-up. Then when I get to the fight, I'm doing stand-up when really I want to do like, flying arm bars and the stuff that I'm used to do. But I think when I took a little bit time off from training my Jiu-Jitsu, that confidence and stuff, it goes down a little bit. So lately, like since I started to go to the UFC, I'm training with Leo Vieira in California, Checkmat. I'm just trying to work my Jiu-Jitsu so much, because when you're competing like at world championships, your level is like the best level it can be, So obviously when I stop to compete, the level can go down. So I'm training a lot my Jiu-Jitsu, but I think the most important thing it really is like the transition, not to be just the ground and not to be stand-up. It's like the hard part, like the cage work and the wrestling. That's the hardest part, I think, to be able to do the transition part, because to stay there and just to bite on your mouth guard and punch, you can do it, but it's a little risky, like maybe just one shot can get in and can stop the fight, and to be on the ground, I don't think any of the girls will ever have like the ground game like me, they'll have to be training like 25 years to get the jiu-jitsu experience like I have, but it's like that whole transition, the girls in MMA, they have good like takedown defense. They know how to work on the cage, so that's the biggest part to get used to doing the transition part.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly on that, I imagine it would have been super humbling that first time when you sort of learned striking, where in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you were like a guard, you were the big kid on the block, and, you were so experienced, and then sort of going to striking and starting from, the very beginning, and sort of, it would have felt like a bit of being a wipeout again. Did you have that kind of moment?
Yeah, that was the best part about it,
That was your favorite part?
Because like on black, of course, like when you're black belt, it's fun, but like I was kind of missing like that learning, like to feel like you're getting better, you kind of hit like a plateau a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when I got back to like, feel like a white belt, it's fun, it's fun. Like 1 week you're learning like all these new combinations. And then the next week you're able to like, they work in the sparring, you're like, man, you feel yourself getting better, and that's really motivating. It's hard to keep the motivation so much, like when you're just going like plateau at the same thing, so like, one more title isn't going to make like too much of a big difference anymore. Like if you're a 5-time world champion or 4-time world champion, for me, it's, of course it's good. I'm not going to complain about being a world champion, but yeah, I want to always keep getting better. You're never like perfect, you can always keep getting better. So to come back to the like white belt feeling and feeling myself getting better was like a lot of good. It was really good motivation for me. I really liked it.
And of course, you are coming back at UFC 224. It's a pretty quick turnaround. We know a big part of this, the decision had to be the opportunity to fight in Brazil. People might not know, but you speak fluent Portuguese, and you kind of went back and forth between there very regularly through your younger years. So tell us, what does it feel like to be on a big pay-per-view card in Brazil? I mean, it must mean a great deal for yourself and your family.
Oh, man, I'm so excited about it. Like you said, it was exactly that. Like when I saw that they would have like the card in Brazil and Rio. And like not even just in Brazil, but like specifically in Rio, was so great. I was like, man, like we have to get on that card. They asked me if I want to be. I said, yes, of course, So I'm really excited for, I think will be like really great fights. Everyone else had Vitor Belfort, Lyoto Machida, Amanda Nunes. So many great people will be there. So I'm so excited for this. I think like there'll be like I'm excited to see how will be the fight. I'm fighting Amanda Cooper. She's American, so I think it'll be fun. It will be fun to be able to represent like Brazil and just I was able to fight in Vegas and now Brazil, so kind of I'm happy I get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, well, I mean, Amanda Cooper, she put up on Instagram in it, and she said that she's going to derail the hype train. What did you think of that when you saw it?
I thought it was like cool. Like. I think it's good, like, that people come with that mentality, like, if they don't come with their best self, like, I won't feel good, if I beat them and, like, they're not there 100%, like, I'd rather beat them, knowing that they're at their best and I'm at my best and the best person won. So I'm excited, I think that's good that she comes, like, to beat me, I think that means, like, she'll train as much as she can. I know I'm gonna train as hard as I can to win this fight. If it was Amanda Cooper or I don't know anyone else in front of me, I'm gonna train the same way. I'm gonna prepare myself the same way. So I'm excited, and I mean I think it's good. Like I think that's the first person really that like kind of talked a little bit. So it's exciting for me.
Yeah.
Like, man, I'm really like going to be in a fight,
Yeah. Well, it's going to be somewhat personal because one of the things she said, this is her quote, she said, I've been waiting for this fight longer than when I got the call for it. I've been waiting for this fight longer than when Mackenzie got signed to the UFC. I've been waiting for this longer than when Mackenzie got signed to Invicta. I've been waiting for this fight from the moment I heard her name. I've been training for this fight. I've been training for Mackenzie, and I've been training to beat her longer than you can imagine. I mean, she seems like she's been very, very focused on you for such a long time. Why do you think you, of all people, why do you think she's, I guess, put the target on your back specifically?
I don't know. I think, I mean, I didn't know who she was until like just recently. So, I mean, I don't know her background. I think maybe she's like a boxer. But I think probably like just knowing maybe she heard of me before and me being like a jiu-jitsu person and her being a stand-up person. And I think even like when I was outside the UFC, anyone who was like fighting me, sometimes I knew like they wanted the fight, but I knew it was more like for the publicity and the tension behind it. Like for sure, I think she has less to lose in the fight than me. So I mean, if she beats me, like man, that's awesome. She like stopped the hype train and everything. If she loses, it's like not a big deal too. You know what I mean? It's like okay, whatever. I think, so I think for her, she can just. It would be good if she can stop the hype. We'll make it even better for her and her career and everything. But yeah, like I said, I didn't really know anything about her before, so I mean, I kind of take it as a compliment, that she had heard about me and that she was training for me. I think that's great.
It's got a really real kind of Law and Order. She might have a shrine with your photos all over the wall at some part of her house vibe to it. So that was why we wanted to pick up that quote. I don't think I've ever heard a quote so interesting before. Anyway, we are running out of time. So quickly, as we finish up, Mackenzie, how do you see this fight going with Amanda? What's your prediction for UFC 224 to get everybody excited?
Yeah, I know she has like 2 losses by submission, so I definitely know like the girls that she fought before, submission-wise, weren't as good as I am on the ground, so I think this fight's gonna end in submission. And my goal this fight is not to be too much standing up. I don't want to stay too much standing. I want to get the submission in Brazil, show like the real Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I'm gonna say like submission.
All right, well, there we go. A vintage Mackenzie Dern performance coming up at UFC 224 in Brazil. Guys, don't forget to follow Mackenzie Dern on Twitter at Mackenzie Dern, and of course on Instagram as well. And see her fight Amanda Bobby Cooper at UFC 224 on May 12th. And it's going to be May 13th here in Australia and New Zealand due to the time difference. Mackenzie, a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We look forward to speaking to you hopefully many times in the future. Good luck at UFC 224, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I've been to Australia a couple times, like Perth, Melbourne, Sydney. So I hope to come back soon and maybe see you guys in person there in Australia.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.